There. Now, I think we're working. Wait till some people come in here. Also going to record this. Hey, can you guys hear me? Hey, Paddington Farm. Just finished my book. Right on. You guys hear me okay? Oh, no, there we go. Hey, guys. Hey, Micro Acres. Loud and clear. Right on. Okay, so I just got to do something here on the back end. If you'll excuse me for 1 second. So, all right. Hey guys, lots of people popping in. So I'm going to do something that I haven't done before. And what I'm going to do is, I kind of mentioned this in the last video. If you saw, what I do every week for my membership site is I do these weekly Q&A videos. Or they started as videos and then they just turned into podcasts because that was easy to do, and the video is just me here. So I figured, why not make it into a live YouTube session? It's kind of stacking functions for me because I can just do it all in one shot, which would take me the same amount of time anyways. And then if there's time, I can just take questions from people on YouTube. So I'll kind of give priority to super chats, and then if there's time left over, just general questions. But what I'm going to do here is basically go through the questions that I got from my members right now, and then super chat, and then general questions, and we'll just see how the timing works out. So you'll have to, you guys can throw questions at me, and I'll surf back at them once I get through these. But yeah, we're here. We're doing this live. Let's go for it. But first, some kind of general housekeeping. I have been on the road a lot this summer, an unbelievable amount, actually. I've gone through like 15 US states, been driving throughout the US, did a wicked trip. The last trip I went through, I basically did like a big Midwestern loop, and I went from Kelowna, where I live, to Lethbridge, Alberta, visited an amazing farm there called Man's Organics. And if you remember it from the field, the next Man's Organics video is up tomorrow. But they're a really, I would say, not super large scale, but fairly large scale, like around 100 acres, regenerative farm. Amazing greenhouse production and incredible field production, building soil. The term I like about, or the thing I like about regenerative agriculture, is this idea that you have positive externalities rather than negative externalities, which is commonly seen in most forms of agriculture. But these guys are building soil at an incredible rate, 1% per year. So amazing stuff. Anyways, from there, I went south. I went to Durango, Colorado, visited a wicked hemp farm there. And that video won't be out for a little while. I've got kind of a lot in the queue, but these guys were incredible, called Clutch Hemp Co. And they're doing organic hemp, large scale, like using combines to harvest the hemp. It was really, really cool. And then from there, I went and visited Gregory Alan Isaacoff, and that video will be, I'll put an edit of that on YouTube in the next little while. That was fun because he's a famous musician, and he's also a market gardener. That was pretty cool. From there, we went up to Nebraska, visited a farm called Robinette Farms. And I would say pretty large scale, tractor-based organic farm. I'm trying to showcase more large scale farms and different types of farms too. But they had some really interesting stuff happening there. Then we went to Dogpatch Urban Gardens, which is a old student of mine, Jenny Quiner, and she's crushing it. They've got this sort of distributive model where they're farming some of the high value crops in the city. They're in Des Moines, and then sourcing other product from growers in the area and selling it at their little farm stand there that does quite well. And then we went over to Vitruvian Farms. Those videos came out on From the Field a week or 2 weeks ago. And those guys are amazing. 2,000 pounds of greens a week. Incredible farm. And then from there, I drove home. And so I've been kind of hanging out here doing home projects. And I'm kind of streaming out content from here. But I've still got lots of trips coming up. I'm going to be visiting Michael Abelman. Some of you might be familiar with him. He's a fairly famous farmer living on Salt Spring Island, Foxglove Farm. He started the Soul Food Farm in Vancouver. And I'm going to be back in Toronto again, visiting some farmers there. I'm going to Quebec. I'll be hanging out with my buddy Joe Martin Fortier. Going to be hanging out with Stefan Subkoyak. And going to be visiting Vermont Compost, Carl Hammer. I'm really excited about that to kind of profile a large-scale compost operation that's very successful. Anyways, that's some of the stuff that's coming up in the next little while over the summer. But let's just jump into our questions. So first one here is from Josh, and he says, I'm a 28-year-old guy from Red Deer, Alberta. When I was 26, I fell off a roof at work and shattered both my heels and just absolutely mangled both my feet. Damn. It's been 2 years now, but it's been a horror story. WCB, which is the Workers' Compensation Board, sent me to school to retrain as a heavy equipment operator. I was a stonemason / contractor, and this isn't an option anymore. It's kind of a long story. I should just start with my question. My main goal in life hasn't changed since my injury, and actually, I think it's become more important that I get my self-employment / homestead going. I've tried my best to get a plan locked down, starting small with a poultry and pig farm / native tree farm that has pasture and room to develop into a proper silviculture with birch trees and highland cattle. I spend most of the part of the year researching permaculture and watching YouTube videos while I was in the wheelchair. I've got a small marijuana grow going now that has been somewhat successful but overall, life injured pains too little, and it's too hard to get work that doesn't involve me doing hard labor on my feet for some prick of a boss. Basically, I'm asking for advice and maybe even help. WCB trained me to run machines, but nobody at all hires a rookie kid that just crawled off a wheelchair. It's a very competitive industry. I bet it is. I had a job tilling fields, but then it started to rain about June 25th and hasn't stopped. I'm not really sure what the question is in a tangle of sentences. I just consider you wiser than me, and you have anyone who would call a lot of experience. Anyways, I just wanted to say thanks. Your videos have really helped me in a lot of ways. At first, I was just bored being stuck at home, so I watched you do your work that I couldn't do, living vicariously, right? But then I realized that going forward, this is probably the best shot I have to pay my bills. You know, there's not really a specific question there, Josh, but it's life sometimes throws you unforeseen circumstances that change everything going forward. So, I don't really have in a nutshell an easy solution for you, except to say, keep faith. And you never know what can happen in life. Sometimes it seems like it's all happened, like life happens to you instead of you kind of controlling your life. And sometimes that happens to the best of us. But you never know what can happen. And if you start on something, opportunities might present themselves that you never foresaw. So it sounds like you've got a lot of interests in things that you're doing. And you can't do hard labor, but that's okay. I don't do hard labor anymore. I certainly did to start, but I'm not out tilling the field all the time and pulling weeds. I'm doing other things. So you adapt, you figure it out. I don't really know what else to say besides that, brother. It sounds like, certainly an interesting circumstance, but it's not like, hey, it could be worse. It could be way worse. You could be a quadriplegic. You could have lost limbs, but you didn't. And you can still find something to do. I think your biggest thing to overcome is going to be the mind, is what's in your mind, not necessarily the limitations of your body, is overcoming that the difficulties you've had, and you're going to have to just really put things into perspective and stay positive. And the amazing thing about a positive attitude is that it's totally contagious, and people will gravitate towards others who have a sort of leadership mentality. And I've met people who have had the worst set of circumstances, yet still do amazing things. Actually, when I was at Robinette Farms in just outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, the I forget his name, her husband, Chloe, her husband had gotten in a car accident and become a paraplegic, and this guy was still doing a lot of stuff on the farm, and he had to walk with like those type of stilts that you can carry your legs with. So he had some mobility with his legs, but not much. I mean, this guy was like a competitive rock climber before. He was still doing things like that. He was still doing extreme sports and just living life to the hilt. They had 3 kids, and he was actively involved in the farm. So, you can still do a lot of things on a farm. You can still run a tractor. You can still use a lot of the machinery. Maybe you're not going to do the backbreaking work, but you can find people to help you do that. And if you have the right mindset and attitude, and you're building a business that people are interested in, that's going to draw people to you. So I would say keep faith and just keep at it, man. And things will sort themselves out for you. All right. Our next question is from Dan. It says, "Hey, Curtis, thought you might like this. Any feedback would be incredibly valuable. Been a long time watcher of your channel. We run a small vertical hydroponics farm in Pitt Meadows, BC. We figured out a way to grow herbs in towers with no soil. We currently have a small greenhouse and a small indoor space for microgreens. We have a very different business model than most farms. We put those towers in grocery stores living in micro hydro systems, and customers pick them alive off the vine. You can't get any fresher than that. The bonus for the grocery store is that they only pay for what is sold by weight. There is virtually zero wastage as they take the towers back and regrow them. As we take the towers back and regrow them. My question is, what is the best way to get into some of the bigger grocery stores? As it's a radical new selling method, we're finding it very difficult to get attention, although the ones that do respond are going crazy over the towers. Thanks for the time. Would love to send some photos of our greenhouse. Currently has about 40 kilograms of basil sitting in it." That's super cool. So I've seen a similar thing to this before. You're certainly not the first one to do it, but yeah, it is a new market stream. And I would say it's going to be one of these things that you're going to get into market streams slowly but surely, and then it might explode because you are tapping onto a relatively new food trend, but that is a growing trend. So how you get into the grocery stores, I mean, it's really making calls. It's phoning produce managers, and sometimes with the franchise ones, it's calling the regional managers and having a discussion and then going in for a meeting. But certainly the easiest way, the first sort of like lowest hanging fruit, is to go to a particular store that you're interested in and find out who the produce manager is and just go and ask to talk to them. Talking to produce managers isn't quite the same as talking to chefs at high-end restaurants. You don't need to be as cognizant of not annoying them and taking up their time. Produce managers are a little bit more easygoing. It's it's a lower paying job. It's a little bit less prestigious of a job. And so there's a little bit less ego involved. So it's just going in there and talking to people, making connections, and then, getting them to try some product. The one challenge you have with your product is that everything about it is unique, particularly with the way it's displayed. And it requires a special type of area to display. It's not like taking bagged greens into a store and then just putting them on a shelf. There's a lot more logistically, and I think that's going to be your challenge. So I don't really have any ideas for you on how you get around that, but certainly just going in and making the connections and talking to the managers is going to be the best foot in the door. And from there, it's they might be willing to give it a try. And I think in your case, it might be best to give people either some free product or some grace periods or some understanding that you're not going to get your best margin right out of the gate, because there's quite a bit of risk on their end to try your product because it's so new, and there's a lot of nuances to it with the way it's set up. So, this also means that you're going to have, you're going to have a lot on your shoulders to take the initiative to make sure that that's set up the way you want it to be set up, and you have to be very proactive. Like I said, it's so different than just taking a bagged product, bringing it in boxes, and then having them put it on the shelves. You pretty much have to micromanage the setup of this product. So that's where the challenge is going to be, and that's where you're going to find resistance when you talk to people. But if you have a lot of things like perhaps photos of other stores that you're dealt with, photos of the display, and then you've got a real turnkey way to come in and set that display up so that you can make it as easy for them to engage with you, then that's certainly going to reduce the friction and the resistance to it. So I would say, those are my thoughts on that. Really, it's really interesting though. I would love it if you did send me some pictures of this. I'd love to see how that's going. Maybe sometime I'll come up there and visit you and do a video from the field. Thanks for your question, Dan. If anybody's curious about that, Dan put his website link in here. It's foodonthegrow.com, so people can check that out. Next question here is from Megan. She says, "Hey Curtis, thanks so much for what you do. It's uncanny how you've been addressing topics that are relevant to my current context. I thoroughly enjoy From the Field, an incredible resource that I want to take even better advantage of." So my first question, here in Mexico, Oaxaca, Central Valley specifically, wow, very cool. It is difficult to store large, dependable, regular quantities of, it's difficult to source. Sorry, I said store. Difficult to source large, dependable, regular quantities of chemically untreated seed for growing microgreens. There are some such seeds available, but is limited variety. Can you please talk about the importance of using untreated seed for microgreens? What are the dangers to the farmer and the consumer? Are there any direct harmful effects to the environment in the microgreen context? For the consumer, it is more hazardous than eating mature vegetables that were grown. She's asking, is it more hazardous than eating mature vegetables that are grown from therium treated seed? Of course, for micros where the seed trays are on the product, for aesthetic reasons, or seed needs to be of natural color. Do you have any experience with microgreen business that use seeds from sources that are not larger scale commercial? I think guaranteed rates of germination are important. I know that using organic or chemically untreated seed is a fundamental part of supporting organic agriculture, but I would also like to be clear on the health and environmental factors that are causing me and other growers to smuggle in untreated seeds from the U.S. companies. Maybe it is best to keep smuggling in seed, but to also write letters to Mexican seed companies to pressure them for better access to chemically untreated seed. Also, I think that learning how to produce top quality seed for market will be in my future. Thanks so much for your time, and I'll hit you up with more questions soon. Yeah, this is actually a surprisingly common question I've got from people in Mexico, and I don't know much about it because, I mean, I've certainly seen untreated seed, and we definitely have untreated seed here in Canada and the US. Thanks, babe. But it's more common down in Mexico, I think, because there's just so many soil nematodes, like bad soil nematodes, that it's just common for people to use that kind of seed in their fields. And that seed is obviously not meant for microgreens. Can I speak to the harm of this on human consumption? I can't really, because I don't know the data on it. I can certainly tell you that I can't imagine the type of customers that are going to be buying microgreens from you are going to want to use seed that's chemically treated, because, well, for one, that's not how those microgreens are meant to be consumed. They're meant to be consumed right after, and you're so close to the seed that chances are you're probably getting some of that chemical on the product. Whereas when you're growing to a plant to full maturity, there's probably less risk to human health. I'm sure there's still some, but there's probably a lot less risk. So I don't really know what to say to this besides you might be best off doing what you're doing, is smuggling in seed. I've gone down to Mexico a ton in the last number of years, and so one thing I can say that's an advantage is that it's it's probably really easy to smuggle stuff into Mexico. Not that I have any experience with that, but they pretty much wave through anybody. And I'm assuming, Megan, though I could be wrong, I'm assuming that you are actually Canadian or American, because Megan isn't a Mexican name. So I'm assuming you have citizenship in the U.S. and maybe that's how you're bringing it down. Because, as far as going down into Mexico, if you're driving, I mean, it's pretty much come one, come all. I've been across the Mexican border into Tijuana probably at least a few times, and it's like, come on through. They don't. So, but is that a viable thing to do for a business? Not really, unfortunately. I mean, I certainly think you're correct in trying to lobby some of the Mexican seed producers to see if you can get some of that seed sourced. However, I imagine you're a drop in the bucket to their normal customer base. So I wouldn't expect a lot of take on that request, but it's certainly worth trying. Other than that, I don't really know what to say, but yeah, it's definitely, I mean, if you're selling to like gringos and you're in, like, I've never been to Oaxaca. It's actually one of the places in Mexico that I've wanted to go for a long time. But like a lot of the other places I've been, there's a lot of expats, and I've been to farmers markets down there that entirely sell to expats because the local Mexicans aren't really buying microgreens, but the expats are buying by the pound. And so I know if that's your customer base, yeah, they're probably not going to want treated seed. So yeah, it's certainly, something to consider, but I don't have a solution for you there directly. But thanks for your question, and I hope, that gives you some food for thought. Cool to see a lot of conversation over here in the chat. David from Micro Acres is present, and it looks like he's handling the a lion's share of questions. So right on, David. So you guys probably, many of you have probably seen that video I did with Micro Acres in Airdrie, Alberta, basement microgreen operation. They're doing very well, and thanks for joining us here, David, and thanks for answering questions. So we got a few more, 4 or 5 more questions here. So our next question is from Carl, and some questions from a home gardener. So point form. So no introduction, just roots, crops, and greens. If greens are harvested only once or twice from a root crop like beets, radishes, or turnips, will the plant go on to form a root? I wonder if it's possible to sow only once. Yeah, they do, but not, I've done it with all of them, just probably just through screw ups through my many years of farming. Beets in particular, I've done it where I've seeded beets and I needed some extra auxiliary greens. And so I harvested the tops with my quick cut greens harvester, and then they turned into fully producing roots. And I couldn't tell anything noticeable that made them different from a normal beet crop. So yes, there. And turnips and radishes, I don't see why it wouldn't be any different. I've never sold radish greens. I've sold turnip greens, but when I'd done that, I basically after we harvested the roots, ripped the greens off and just put those in totes and then sold that. So we didn't go through the greens harvester and then let them grow back and do it again. But I don't see why not, especially because they're relatively low feeders. So I'm sure they could handle some of their foliage being cut and then it regrowing to produce a fruit. So yes, but there's probably a reason why nobody really does that on a production level. I imagine it's going to shave off, at least a week to 10 days off your date to maturity to get the full crop. And so if you take that into consideration, it might be worth trying. But like I said, I doubt that's a thing that people generally do. And I'm sure there's a reason for that. So regarding pole beans have reached top of the trellis. Better to leave alone or cut off the tops. I'm in a zone 7B. If that's this time of year, I've always just let them start coming back down the trellis. Depends on the variety. I'm not an expert on pole beans. I mean, I've got them in the garden right now. I'm growing Blue Lake. But yeah, you could cut the tops. I mean, if you're going to succession plant more of them, you could cut the tops, and then that might force the last remaining beans to produce. But then if you had another crop coming between 3 and 4 weeks apart from the last seeding, you could make it work that way. But I don't know anybody that does that regularly, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. There's all kinds of people out there doing all kinds of things. Another one here, BCMV and BYMV. When pole beans have bean common or a yellow mosaic virus, is it best to pull out or dispose of the infected plant or just leave it alone till the end of the season? I'm not an expert on this whatsoever. Whenever I see disease stuff, I pull it out. That's really all I can say there. Next one, plant spacing and yield. For example, Swiss chard. Seed packet recommends 4-inch to 12-inch. Assume that the size of the leaves harvested is not an issue. Over a growing season, is it total yield or area substantially different from 4-inch to 12-inch spacing like it is with Swiss chard? Is there a spacing that you like best? Yeah, I got some Swiss chard in my back garden. I like to go a little bit wider. I go 8 inches to 12 inches. 8 inches works fine. So I go 8-inch on center. So just in sort of a diamond pattern, 8 inches on center, couple seeds per hole or plug. And actually what I usually do if in my garden is I'll just with my fingers make on center holes every 8 inches. I'll drop 3 or 4 seeds per hole. And if they all germinate, I'll let them grow for a while, and I'll start to thin them out as they get bigger, so that I eventually just have one thick stalk plant per hole, and that seems to work best for me. Then another one regarding plant spacing and pest control. Does wider spacing reduce pest pressure? Are predators more effective? For example, are parasitic wasps or ladybugs more effective at aphid control in a bush bean bed with 6-inch space? Dude, you're overthinking this, my friend. You are way overthinking this. I don't know. I don't know if that's measurable. I mean, my instinct would be to say it's going to be less on wider spacing because there's less plants. But between 6 inches and 4 inches, I'd say that's negligible. It would be more like between something that was heavily densely seeded in a row versus something that was widely seeded in a row. Then I would say there's going to be an obvious difference on those extremes, but these are hardly extremes. You're comparing 6-inch to 4-inch. I don't know if that's even measurable. So I don't know there. Keep in mind with parasitic wasps or ladybugs, those things only work well when you have an enclosed environment. And I'm telling you, even in a garden context, because I'm just gardening right now, and I see aphid pressure. And if I put ladybugs in the garden, they eat and then they leave. They don't stick around. And it's the same with parasitic wasps. They're not effective when you have an open area. So keep that in mind with that. And then Omri approved organic insecticides. What do you think of insecticidal soap? Like soap and pyrethrin. I know Omri has to say about this, but do you consider them safe and organic chemicals for pest control? My cohabitants do not want physical barriers. They insist that insect netting is ugly and the pesticide fear is overblown. I use insecticidal soap, safer soap. I use it, works great. I also use insect nettings. I've done that on the farm and the garden context, and I've never used pyrethrin, but I know lots of farmers that do. Though yes, they're probably dangerous for human consumption. I can't speak on that. I haven't looked at studies on it, and I've never used it. But yeah, I mean, on a garden context, sure. I mean, I don't know, is pyrethrin really that necessary? On a garden context, you can manage so many pest problems just manually. Like the only one I can't keep up with is aphids. And I had, especially in my greenhouse here, I had brutal aphid pressure. And that's when I started using the safer soap. But yeah, for the most part, you can just manage pests by just killing them when you see them. And on a small garden, you don't have a huge monoculture. And, by that, I even mean, 100 square feet of a particular crop. In a garden context, you're most likely not going to have that. Maybe you would with something like potatoes and onions and garlic. Those aren't that pest prone though. Potatoes can be. They can be pretty brutal, but it's actually fairly easy on a gardening context to manage potato beetle. You just go and squish them. It's disgusting, but it's doable. So that's all your questions. You say your video / audio content is very informative. I'm learning to think and practice like a professional. I do not want to start a farm, but it's a lot of fun to learn about agriculture and the business of farming. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. And just take a quick, how's our chat doing? You guys got lots going on. Yeah, David's got a lot of questions coming at him. So I got more here to answer. David, a lot of questions in there. You can answer about microgreens. Okay, next one is from Aria. Hey, Curtis, just want to take a moment to thank you for the information and resources you put out there. 2 years ago, my world was flipped upside down when I had to pull my kids away from their dad for not being abused and mistreated. I think you probably meant for being abused and mistreated. I was essentially homeless, living up in a pop-up camper in my now husband's yard, having to fight for my children. 3 months later, I was injured at work, leaving my right hand pretty much useless and permanently injured, which is detrimental to a massage therapist. Found myself working 2 or 3 fast food jobs while keeping a few clients. I could just try to maintain some level of income. We found ourselves in a desperate financial situation with all of our food coming from food banks. After months of being sickened that I couldn't feed my kids healthy food, I went to YouTube and I found your videos. I think I watched every single video you've made with particular interest in microgreens. I started with a plastic Tupperware containers, paper towels, and radish seeds from Dollar Tree. I watched in amazement and that I was actually able to grow them. Every day, as soon as I got home from work, I'd look at the process and track what was happening. While it wasn't a great success and we didn't get yummy microgreens, mostly because I overwatered, what it did give me was hope, which is one of the things that kept me going. I watched your videos over and over, taking notes on everything you said, and was even in the microgreens webinar you hosted. Even though I haven't used it as a business yet, I went from having a black thumb to growing food that I know what to do with. This year, I have over 50 tomato plants, carrots, cucumbers, and all kinds of stuff. My husband inherited a 3-acre property in Mississippi with a nearly 4,000 square foot greenhouse, and now we're selling everything we own, moving there to restore the greenhouse and turn it into an urban farm, from homeless to homestead. And I cannot thank you enough for your passion and expertise that you share so openly. I hope you know how much you are helping and giving so many people hope for a better in life. I'm even getting my brothers into growing microgreens. It's contagious. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know how much your videos have changed our lives. Wow. Thank you. That's lovely. And I'm so happy that this stuff has been so valuable to you. So that wasn't a question in there. There's just a really thoughtful email. And thanks a lot. And best of luck. It sounds like you're on a path to success, and let me know how it goes, and maybe I'll come and visit you and do a video with you sometime. I love the tagline, from homeless to homestead. That could be an incredible clickbaity title for a YouTube video. Wow. Thanks so much, Aria. Best of luck. Our next question is from Cheryl. It says, thank you so much for these newest videos. We own 17 acres, but should inherit over 100 acres and have access to some of that in a couple years. The BCS never made sense in our context, but it wasn't until these last 3 videos that I saw that we could use 3 videos that I saw what we could use to replace it. I have a friend who works for Kubota, so I'm going to look into a package deal on the implements. Thank you for expanding your scope and the size of farms you feature. Side note, yesterday I found out that the USA Food Safety Modernization Act also takes in corn, soybean, beef cattle, pig, and poultry farmers. When I took my training 2 years ago, they said none of that counted toward our total farm income, and that if we were exempt, but it does now. None of the conventional farmers I know even heard of the FSMA. Thanks again. Thank you, Cheryl. And yeah, I'm trying to do more of that. I'm trying to broaden the scope of the farms that I'm visiting. I've done 2 sessions now with Dakota Cohen, who's raising cattle, pigs, and poultry, or egg layers on a regenerative farm in Farintosh, Alberta. And so I'm trying to expand the scope with everything. And definitely there's more stuff on tractors coming from the field. The video that's coming out tomorrow morning at Man's Organics, we kind of go through Andrew's whole machine field. And these guys make a lot of their own stuff. It's really cool. They have all these custom implements that they built. So it's really, yeah, we're going to be showing more of that. And I plan to visit more farmers that are using these kinds of machines. I'm even trying to find, like, I would really like to even visit like super large scale commodity growers. And I've got some more hemp farms coming up that I'm going to visit, some more like commodity hemp fiber and CBD farms. But I'm interested in it all, even, conventional farms. I think there's lots we can learn from them. And there's so much kind of self-righteousness, I find, in the organic space, that people think that all these farmers are bad. They're all bad people. And I think that's a misconception. And I think it's a horrible thing to assume, because sometimes people were just kind of work with what they know, and they don't know it. And you can't really blame everybody for not knowing everything that you know, because everybody kind of comes around at different times. Everybody is ignorant at some point in their life, and we're always every day becoming better and better. And so, I mean, this is sort of the heart of inequality too, in the sense that there's so much inequality in the world that, and it's not a bad thing, but there's so much inequality that one person is unequal to themselves from one day to the next, meaning that we're all getting better and we're all improving and trying to find something better. And so we're all unequal in that way. We're unequal on the things that we know and the things that we can do, but we're all trying to move forward and get there. And it's important that that those of us who have figured something out understand that there's others moving forward, but they might be slightly behind us, and that we're patient with those people and try to work with them as well. So got a now, I just realized I can't share my screen in this silly YouTube thing. Unless, what's this? No, that's a share thing. Okay. I was going to share the screen because the question here has a picture in it. I mean, it's mostly for me, but so this is Charlie from Rain Dog Farm. Howdy, Curtis. I'm using the Jang with the F26 roller. This crop is arugula, and I've been getting patchy germination. Is this from going too slow, too fast? Appreciate your help, and thanks for all you do. So for those that can't see the picture, this is an image of, I think he's using the JP5 because it's fair. Like, is there 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it looks like a 10-row crop. And then there's like a row, and then a part there's no row, and then a bit of row, and then so it's patchy. And he's wondering if this has anything to do with the cedar. It might, and it might not. So what you should do to find out if it's your cedar is, it's probably not, because if you're using a JP5, you have 5 rollers, and it's unlikely that. So what we've got on the rows here are, imagine 5 rows going down like this, and then all 5 of them stop, and then they carry on, and then they start again. So I would say it's next to impossible that there could be a mechanical issue with your rollers in the sense that all 5 of them stopped at the same time. I think we can safely assume that that's not happening. I think what you've got happening here is you might have some rough compost in there, and that when you were running your Jang, if you have really choppy compost, sometimes what can happen is you get buildup where the hoppers are touching the ground. And then as the hoppers are making the furrow, it's dragging a bunch of compost, and that can screw up where your seeds will not get covered, or they might get buried too much and then they don't germinate. So that's one thing that it could be. Another, it could be irrigation, where you had some patchy irrigation, but maybe that's not the case because I'm looking, you've got a red Russian kale crop next to it. But you know what? That's kind of patchy too, actually. Yeah, it might be irrigation for you there, Carl or Charlie. But you know what you should do is take your Jang and then load up your hoppers with some, maybe call it sacrificial seed, and just run it on a flat surface, like even a concrete, just slowly, and just look down and make sure that that's dropping seed. Just make sure that you look at all the parts, right? So the main parts of that tool are going to be that affect the planting of the soil, not including the hopper that's dropping the seed, but down below you've got the shoe that makes the furrow in the soil, and then behind that there's another little piece that closes the hole, or that closes the soil up behind it. Make sure that all of that is working properly as it should, because you might have some dragging, and it looks like you're planting in some pretty thick compost there, but it doesn't look like super rough compost. I see, where the seed comes up, it looks nice and thick. I think it's probably an irrigation issue. But again, make sure, just double check the way the machine's running and that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And then you can backpedal from there to see, if it might be anything mechanically. But I think it's probably an irrigation issue. Have you had a lot of dry weather lately? Sometimes, really heavy rain can affect germination. If you have low points, and arugula is one thing that does not do well with overwatering. Arugula needs to have the right kind of watering. So it could be, like I said, an irrigation issue. It could also be an overwatering issue. It could be that, say, your bed is a little uneven, and then if you have low points where, say, you get a bunch of heavy rains a number of days in a row, and on those low points where water settled, that could rot that arugula seed, and that might be why it didn't germinate in those parts. You'd have to kind of look at that bed. I mean, this is a 2-dimensional image, so I can't really tell. But if you go out and look at that bed and look at the parts that there's no seed germinated, see if that's a depression, and then ask yourself, have you had lots of rain lately? And then that might be your answer there. Because I can tell you one with growing microgreens with arugula, they're so dodgy when it comes to overwatering. They just mold really quickly, so they're really precarious that way. But thanks for your question there, Charlie. And then we got 2 more. Next question is from Craig, and these are shorter ones. Last summer, some of our carrots had an off flavor. Would this have been the result of leaving them too long in the ground or something else? How often did you seed baby carrots for bunching to sell fresh at the farmer's market in spring and summer? And that window of time, and what window of time did you allow for harvesting? So, yeah, with carrots commercially, I would usually leave a 2-week window to harvest. So I would plant for production. I basically seed carrots every 3 weeks. Not in the spring, like the first crop you're going to seed, and then I might leave a month or a little bit more till the next one. But once I'm into June, I'm basically seeding them every 3 weeks. And then you could, they could even sit in the ground for 3 weeks after they're good to go. Carrots, it depends on your soil. So here's the thing with questions like this. There's so many variables, right? Like, I don't know your climate. I don't know what kind of soil you have. I don't know what kind of variety of carrots you're growing. But if they have an off flavor, it could be soil. Maybe they're sitting in the ground too long. You'll know they're sitting in the ground too long if they're just massive. But I've even had massive carrots and they taste fine. I don't think you can really keep carrots in the ground too long. I overwinter them and they stay on the ground for months. So that's probably not it. It might be something to do with soil. It also could be variety. With a lot of this stuff, seed variety is the biggest thing. You got to, if you're going to grow commercially, you got to buy good seed. So that's important. Hey, we got Jeb in here too. Jeb Gardner. Jeb, I love your videos, man. You have like the best music and narration. And see answering some questions in there. So got a couple rock star farmers here. That's pretty cool. Thanks for joining us, guys. And last question here is from Yanni. So I've had actually probably a couple questions from Yanni in the last number of from the field Q&As. So Yanni is saying, "Hey Curtis, how are you? I'm good. This is Yanni from Israel. If you remember me from previous emails, I do. Today I've got a couple more content request / suggestion. I've got more of a content request / suggestion rather than a question. Due to the condition of my market garden, loads of disease and pests, I've been advised to solarize my field, approximately an acre in size, using clear tarp, which should be preceded with heavy irrigation. This method actually was conceived here in Israel in the 70s. Apparently, this should be done in July / August, which are by far the hottest here. Unfortunately, I've missed the train for this season, and I'll probably have to wait for next summer. I'm actually considering not growing anything in July, August as a rule, as it gets very hot and moist, with peaks over 40 C sometimes. Yeah, that's hot. Anyway, I'd really like to hear if any of the farms you're visiting also solarize, and any other insights for this method, which is very harsh on the soil biology. Not much is supposed to survive. Thanks again for all the great content on the site." Yeah, I mean, solarizing is, people do it. I've never really, as far as weed management, I don't prefer solarizing, even with killing grass. I prefer black tarps. But you're actually the second person in Israel that's mentioned that to me. I had a consulting client there, and she told me about that, and this is what people were doing. So I can't really speak to it too much, but I think you're smart in taking July and August off. Like a lot of farmers down in the southern states in the US take the summer off because it's brutally hot, and they kind of wind down and then prepare for the fall. I've got a video coming out for From the Field in the next few weeks with Ray Tyler. I did like a phone interview with him, and I have a videographer that I use from his village, Rose Creek Village. And so he was shooting Ray while I was talking on the phone. So it's going to be like a video. You can't really tell that we're on the phone because I've got a camera guy down there filming him. But he was talking about that, about taking the summer off, or kind of winding things down a bit to get prepared for fall. And I think you're smart to do that. Because sometimes it's like, why bother fighting it? If it's brutally hot, like 40 Celsius, and if it's humid, is brutal. But I think you're pretty dry in Israel, but I imagine it's just punishingly hot down there. But yeah, I mean, I in none of the farms that I visited recently were they doing solarization actively. This isn't really a thing that a lot of people in North America do, as far as I've seen. Not to say that people don't do it. It's certainly not common. I haven't seen anybody doing this, so I can't really speak to it. But I think you're better off with your gut is just shutting her down for those hottest months, and then circling back and starting back up in the fall. But yeah, solarization. I mean, the thing is with things like solarization is, yes, it can really hurt the soil, but you can build back the soil. If it's a situation where you've got so many pests and diseases in your soil, and that's going to give you a fresh start, do whatever works, man. Just do whatever works. And I'm frozen up here. Okay. So that's all of our questions from the field members. So let's scan over here to see any other questions. So I'm only going to hang around for a little bit longer, guys. We're actually going to go out for dinner soon here. But let's scan in the questions here. Jennifer in Nebraska had a comment about Robinette's produce. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, I'm stoked for that video to come out because they were doing some interesting stuff with like custom grazing on the parts of their farm that they couldn't put in fields. I thought that was kind of neat. I've often thought about I've just been kind of like on this hemp trip lately after I visited Clutch Organics down in Durango, Colorado. I mean, everybody in the cannabis space, it seems mostly everybody's in the marijuana space and THC, but it seems like there's so much and this Robinette doesn't grow hemp, but this connects to them because I had an idea about a way you could farm hemp and then do custom grazing in between. I think I'd like to see more of that. I'm curious if there's any farmers out there that are doing that. If anybody, is watching this and is commercially growing hemp on a larger scale, I'd love to visit your farm. It's something that seems like could be such a massive boom for farmers, particularly in the Midwest. Like I drove through the entire Midwest of the US. I came up from Colorado, went Nebraska, Iowa, then I was over in Wisconsin, then I came back up South Dakota, Wyoming and all that. And it's basically one big corn farm. Like everybody in the Midwest is growing corn. Imagine how much more of a better lifestyle those farmers would have if they were growing hemp. And not only for the farmers themselves, but also for the health of the soil. Like corn has got to be one of the gnarliest crops you can grow for the soil, in the sense that it is such a heavy feeder. And the way it's grown, it's like Roundup ready stuff. I mean, it's brutal agriculture. Hemp is this amazing plant that has so many functions, produces incredible proteins. CBD oils there's 100 CBD or cannabinoids they've discovered. And so the application in the health industry and pharmaceuticals is amazing. Like my friend Patrick down in Colorado, who's growing hemp, was telling me that farmers that are growing hemp for them, they also grow their own, are making like $20,000 an acre. That's incredible for large scale farming. That's absolutely incredible. And I just think about how much agriculture could turn around for more of the common folk who have the infrastructure to grow large crops. They've got center pivots, they've got large tractors, they've got combines and harvesters and vacuum seeders and cultivators and things like this. They've got a lot of infrastructure to do hemp. And I think it'd be really cool to see. The regulations are certainly somewhat nebulous, especially in the US, but that seems to be changing around almost faster than it is in Canada. Like in Canada, it's legal, but the amount of regulations that you have to go through here are absolutely insane. It's kind of turned out exactly how I thought it would in Canada. It's like kind of a libertarian's worst dream, but it's like, yeah, now it's legal, but it's so regulated that it's so hard to be a small producer or a small business person and get into that. It's like pretty much just make it so hard to get in that it just becomes monopolistic, and I can't stand that stuff. Oh, here's an interesting comment. Curtis, have you read the book Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness and Violence? I'm gonna Google that. I can tell you what, I'm not worried if this is a book that's like telling people the dangers of marijuana. I just simply don't believe it because I've been around it my entire life. And what does this say here? Most Americans believe the drug should be legal. Cannabis link. Yeah, sure, man. I mean, I don't really care, to be honest. It just sounds like scare tactics. I mean, yeah, you certainly can't judge a book by its cover, but I can tell you that I've been a marijuana user for a very long time, and most people around me are, and I don't see it. Not like alcoholism, not even close. Um, the biggest problem is maybe somebody eats too many Doritos when they when they get the munchies. That's the furthest I've seen from it. So yeah, I think I'll pass on that one. Thanks for the suggestion though. What else have we got here? There's a lot of stuff in here. Here's a question. Curtis, how do you get around your city's stupid zoning restrictions? I cannot legally sell anything I grow out of my backyard, and there is no way to get land without spending a fortune in Northern California. Yeah, you're in California, man. It's unfortunate. To be honest, how do I get around zoning restrictions? I ignore them. That's how I just ignored all that stuff. But it's different in Canada because in Canada, the police won't kick down your door for like not mowing your lawn. And I've seen that actually happens in the US. Like I've seen people get arrested for ridiculous things like this. And California is probably the worst state in the US for insane regulations. So I don't want to tell you to ignore rules or laws and get yourself in trouble, but that's what I did. I ignored all of those things. I didn't pay attention. I just like, it's my land. I can do what the hell I want on it, and it's never been an issue for us. David's in here saying he offers phone consulting. Yeah, if anybody wants to, I'm not consulting anymore, guys. So, and I get literally at least one email a day about consulting, and I'm turning them all onto people that that I know can. I will do consulting again. I just this year I needed to kind of slow down as we had our family's growing, and I needed more time. So I'm not doing any consulting right now, but maybe next year I'll get back into it. But David at Microacres is doing consulting. If any guys want to have somebody who's an awesome microgreen grower do consulting for, David at microacres.ca. And he's in the chat here too if you want to engage him a little bit. Thomas asks, hey Curtis, what's your favorite book on microgreens / urban farming? I don't have one. I don't think there is one. To be honest, I don't read about farming really ever. I did when I started. I don't hanging out with farmers is like literally my day job now. My day job before I wrote a book and all that was farming, was running my farm. And my day job now is actually running from the field.farm. That's my day job. And then on the side, what else do I do? I run Paper Pot Co. with Diego Fooder. We're developing a bunch of new products that are we're going to have some wicked products for microgreen growers. I can't wait to show you guys. We're on version 3 of a new product that is going to change the game for dry seed microgreen growers. At least on the small to medium scale microgreen growers. If you're doing thousands of flats a week, it's probably not for you, but we've got a solution coming out. There'll be an announcement about that in the fall. But yeah, so I can't suggest any books there, Thomas. I mean, I read books, like I read self-help books. I read right now I'm reading 1491. That's an amazing book. I just do audiobooks right now because I've been driving a lot this summer as I visit farmers, and 1491 has just been this mind-blowing book. I've got Robert Kiyosaki's new book in the queue. That's going to be next. Fake, that's called. I'm a huge Robert Kiyosaki fan. So yeah, I don't read about farming really. I read about economics, philosophy, history, self-help, mindset stuff. That's what I read about. And I visit farmers all the time, so I'm getting that day-to-day education when I'm on site. What else? There's a lot in here. VP Images. Hey all, greetings from Trinidad and Tobago. What is Tobago? I'm saying that wrong. Curtis, you're awesome. What you're doing. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Hey Curtis, I'm running a half-acre farm and I can't decide what to buy as a tractor. I was going to buy a diesel tiller, 10 HP with trailer, or trailer, or buy a walk-behind tractor. Yeah, if you're half an acre, definitely get a BCS. There's half an acre is way too small to run a tractor on, like a Kubota or a New Holland or something like that. And I'm not an expert on tractors. I'm certainly an expert on BCS. I can speak to BCS and walk behind tractors very well. I'm learning. I'm a student of larger farming right now, and I'm getting a great education. These farms I'm visiting have been mind blowing. But yeah, get yourself a walk behind tractor. You go on my website, go to theurbanfarmer.co, and then go to Curtis's gear list, and then in there I have a list of all the BCS implements that I use and would suggest. Da, 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 da. There's Jeb Gardner. I'm doing hydroponic microgreens with water and earthworm castings. How do you think consumers would react to something like that? That's a good question, Jeb. I don't know if consumers are actually asking those questions. I don't know if there's actually any value. It depends on your market. I forget where you're located, but I don't know if that's actually. See, the thing is, microgreens are still a very new crop in regards to the marketplace, the general marketplace. So I don't know if the customer really cares yet about that. So I think if you were to put that on your branding, that might overwhelm the consumer with too much information, and then that might cause them to not. They're like, I don't know, that sounds weird. So that's my reaction to that is like microgreens are already still so new that when people see at a grocery store, most people that see a package of microgreens don't even know what they are. There's only like a tiny minority of people who actually know what microgreens are, and they go and they buy them a lot. So, I mean, I guess maybe the question would be better to ask the people that already buy microgreens, would they be more converted to a product like yours that makes those claims than what's already on the shelf? That's a good question, and I don't know. You'd have to do a bit further market research to find out. But my gut is it doesn't matter. Like, if that's how you're growing, because I know you do hydroponics. I've watched a number of your videos, and if you're doing that stuff your way and that's just the way you grow, I would say just grow it, and what the customer doesn't need to know that. Just market them as microgreens. But that's an interesting question. Man, a lot of microgreen growers in here. For those of you who want to come in my microgreens course, we're launching that again in October. But if anybody wants to join it early, they can. And let me see here, because we actually made where is it here? I have a link. If anybody actually wants to join it now, they can. It's just that we're not doing the live webinars right now. I'm going to paste the link in the show notes or in the chat, and I'll also put it in the show notes of this video. But so you can join my microgreens course now, and you can stay in it until we do the live stuff in October. So you can basically just consume all the content now, and then you can come back and watch the webinars when we do them. But we also pre-recorded all the webinars from previous sessions too. But yes, I seem to be getting a lot of emails. Like a lot of people starting microgreen operations, and so yeah, that course covers a ton. And yeah, so you can join it now if you want, or you can wait till October. A lot of questions in here. Do you water your crops with municipal drinking water? If so, do you use some kind of filtration system? Do you think trace pharmaceuticals and chemicals like chlorine and fluoride affect the crop? Yeah, I water with the city water that has a bit of chlorine in it. Do I think that trace pharmaceuticals and chemicals affect the crop health? No, I haven't seen any evidence for that. In fact, there's more evidence to say that a little bit of chlorine in drinking water has actually had a considerable positive effect on human health because it's removed a lot of biologicals, dangerous biologicals. So and chlorine evaporates. If you're irrigating with water that's chlorinated, it evaporates. Like it doesn't affect your crop. This is surprisingly a common question, and I mean, there's just so much paranoia out there. And hey, I get it. Like I'm totally into the conspiracy theories, and I've gone down the rabbit hole on a number of issues, and I understand the reason to be concerned about these things. I just don't see evidence for it. That's all. Fluoride, perhaps. We don't have fluoride in our water. Our city took fluoride out of the water in the 90s, so we're pretty good here. Like you can actually barely taste the chlorine in our water either. Though I drink filtered water. We have a Berkey. I got a Berkey in the greenhouse, and we have our fridge is filtered in the house. But I irrigate with it, and I've never seen any noticeable difference. And I would challenge anybody to show me evidence that there is something to be concerned about there. Hey Curtis, this is from Jay Valencia. Hey Curtis, I just had to express a lot of gratitude for what has become years of learning. Sorry I missed the Steadfast workshop in February. Hey, no problem, dude. Oh, I'm going to be doing, so I took the year off workshops. I'm not doing any workshops this for 2019 at all. But the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to be back at Steadfast Farm in 2020. That'll be February 2020. The tickets are not for sale yet. But we have set the date. It'll be February 3rd February 3rd through 7th. So I'll be back in Arizona at that time. I imagine that will sell up pretty quick because I haven't done any workshops in a while, but I have done a lot of work with Eric Schultz over the years. And so it's always a pleasure to go down there. It's a great, I turn it into a semi vacation too, going down to Arizona when it's cold up here. What else have we got here? Any updates on organic certification for paper pot transplanter, glue residue? Yeah. We met with the Japanese. I was down in San Diego a couple weeks ago. We met with them. There is going to be a solution. So here's the issue. It's actually not the glue. The glue is not the issue with the certified organic. It's the paper. So here's the thing that's so silly about it. And this is what I can't stand about the bureaucracy of the OMRI and certified organic and all that stuff is if it was made with recycled paper with all the same ingredients, it could be certified organic. Like that's it. So it's not recycled paper. If they make it out of hemp paper, it can be. And they've already sent us product to try with hemp paper, and they're fine. The issue has been that they're concerned about is that they break down quicker, which I think is fine because most people don't leave a crop in the paper pot for more than 3 weeks. And they were saying that they start to break down a lot after, I think it was after 7 weeks. So we said to them, that's fine. We'll take them. Let's do it. So it's either going to be, it's 2020. It's either going to be that the, what's it called? What is it called? It's the Organic Organization of the United States. I forget what it's called. It's not coming to my mind, but they're either going to approve it, just waive it, or there's going to be another product. So that's where that's at. So by 2020, there'll be organic paper pots. I think what's most likely going to happen is they're just going to say, yeah, people can use it, because there's a lot of farmers that are dropping their certification to use the paper pot transplanter, like a lot. I've talked to I know of at least a dozen, and I've heard of hundreds. So I think it's in their best interest to make sure there's some kind of that farmers can use it, because the glue is not the issue. It's just that they want the paper to be recycled, which is so silly. Chad, thoughts on BTT? I don't know what that is. Flash. Hey, Curtis, I bought and read your book. I would like to know your thoughts on non-Roundup glyphosate. Well, I mean, it's, so are you saying another brand of Roundup that's glyphosate? I mean, I'm not a fan of glyphosate. However, it has its applications for sure. Like if you have areas that have really bad perennial weed pressure, like Canadian thistle or bindweed, it kills it. And there's not a lot of other things that do. So it has an application. Would I ever suggest using it broadly on crops? No, because it's poison. Like, the more I've been exploring the large scale organic, or not organic, the more large scale farms, is they do this thing in large farming called desiccation. And I was just in Alberta yesterday, and I saw these 1,000 acres of field peas and then mustard and things like this. And the way they harvest these crops is they spray it all with Roundup to kill it. And then that basically expedites the drying process because it kills the crop. And then they harvest it, and then it's dried, and then it's all. So it was funny because there's this new vegetarian product called the Beyond Meat Burger. And I've had it, and it actually tastes very good. I'd rather just eat good meat. Personally, I don't have any illusions about the vegetarian diet anymore. But the funny thing is you get these products like Beyond Meat Burger, and it's made with pea protein, and that's not certified organic pea protein. So if it's not certified organic pea protein, it comes from pea crops that were desiccated with Roundup, that are grown up in the protein to make that burger. So all these vegetarians that are self-righteous about not eating meat are essentially eating Roundup, and they're eating a crop that is poisoning the soil. So what's the worst environmental hazard? I mean, it's insane to me. And I was a vegetarian for 17 years. So like, I understand the issue, but when you compare the alternative, if it's to use large scale conventional agriculture that poisons the earth and the waterways, no, no thanks. So that's my opinion on glyphosate. Brana is saying, hello, I've been seriously thinking about starting a microgreen business and was wondering if you need an FDA license to sell, and if the location I live in is a good spot for growing microgreens. Well, I don't know the location you're in because you didn't say. But stop worrying about licenses. I'm tired of this. Everybody is so switched onto the matrix that they're constantly just like, oh, do I have permission to do this? Does the government say that it's okay to do this? Just grow some damn crops. Stop worrying about if the government thinks he's going to give you permission. Just stop worrying about that stuff. Like, sorry, Brana, I don't mean to come down on you, but this is something that I get constantly. I get an email like this every single day. Somebody's like, hey, what kind of license do I need? Who cares? Just grow the damn crops. You're living in America. Like, you're not going to go to prison for maybe growing some microgreens. Mind you, in some states you might, because the U.S. is that crazy in some places. But just grow it and don't worry about it. Don't worry about licenses. It's better to ask forgiveness than ask permission. Well, it's 4:20, so I think we're going to wrap it up here, guys. There is a lot of questions there that I can't imagine getting to all of them and having the time. But thanks for joining me here. And we're going to do this again next Thursday at this very same time, at this very same place. And we'll do it again for the following Thursdays. And on the 8th of August, I probably won't be able to do it because I'll be traveling. And I'll be hanging out with Jean Martin on one of those Thursdays. And I hope that he'll do one with me. We'll see about that, though. And have yourselves a great rest of the week and weekend. And we'll see you guys later. Take care.